Friday, 4:12 in the afternoon. $2,011 leaves an employer and the app on his phone shows one word: pending. He reads that word as waiting, the way everybody reads it. For the next 8 hours, the money will be doing almost the opposite of waiting.
Pending sounds like a queue. A line of money standing politely, waiting its turn at a window. That image is completely backwards. During those hours, the money is more active than it will be at any other point in its life with him, and none of that activity happens for his benefit. Start with the legal shape of the thing, because everything follows from it.
When money sits in your account, the bank does not hold your cash in a container with your name on it. You handed the bank money, and the bank owes you money. You are not a storer, you are a lender. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in personal finance, and almost nobody is taught it. Your balance is not property sitting somewhere. It is a claim, a promise from an institution to give you that amount when you ask. Everything the bank does next is done with money you effectively loaned it. Ask anyone to draw where their money is, and they draw a vault.
A thick door, a room, stacks with bands around them. That picture is 100 years out of date, and it was never accurate for ordinary accounts anyway. There is no room. There is a line in a database and a legal obligation. Before any of this begins, there is a cutoff time, and it governs everything.
Submit the file 1 minute after it, and the entire payment waits for the next scheduled window. Fortunes of timing are decided by a clock nobody outside the industry has ever looked at, on a schedule nobody publishes to the public. 5 in the evening. His payment is not sent alone. It joins a file with 11,000 other payments from the same processor, bundled into a single batch and handed off as one object. Individual payments almost never travel individually. They travel in crowds, on schedules set decades ago. This is the actual answer to why money moves slowly in a country where messages move instantly. The delay is not technical. It is architectural. The system was built to move batches on a timetable, and the timetable is still the timetable. Nothing is buffering. Something is simply scheduled. 6 o'clock. The batch reaches the point where two institutions must agree. His employer's bank says it is sending. His bank says it is receiving. Between those two statements sits a third set of books where the actual movement is recorded, and that ledger only settles at particular moments. For a stretch of that evening, the amount appears in two places at once. The sending bank has not fully released it, and the receiving bank has not fully claimed it. This overlap has a name in the industry and a very long history. It is not an error. It is the seam where the system breathes. Friday is the worst day to be paid and the best day to be a bank. A payment landing Friday evening has the weekend to sit in the system before the next full processing day. 2 extra nights of pooled balances, every single week, arriving reliably because that is when the country gets paid. Add a Monday holiday and the same effect stretches further. Nobody designed this as a trick. It is the honest consequence of a timetable built when payments moved physically and offices closed. But the consequence still arrives, several times a year, for everybody at once. Around 7, something happens that has nothing to do with him and everything to do with his money. The bank totals up what it is holding across every account in the building, subtracts what it needs on hand, and prepares the remainder for use. This process runs nightly. It has run every night for years. His $2,011 is not identified, tracked, or treated separately in any of this. It has become part of a pool. Money is fungible, which is a dry word for a strange fact. The specific dollars he earned stopped being his specific dollars the moment they arrived. 8 in the evening, and here is the part almost nobody pictures. Banks with more than they need that night lend to institutions that need more than they have. This market exists specifically because the sun goes down and balances must be squared before morning. It runs on very short loans. These loans are enormous and they last hours. Not months, not weeks, hours. A rate that looks negligible on a yearly basis becomes meaningful at that size. Then it repeats 365 nights a year, forever, on money that arrived from ordinary paychecks. By 9, his $2,011 has participated in that market. It has been lent, it has generated a return, and it has been repaid. All of this occurred while he was making dinner. The transaction was real, the return was real, and none of it appeared in his account. The return went to the institution, not to him. And this is not a scandal, it is the arrangement. The bank provides the account, the network, the fraud handling, and the guarantee, and it is compensated by using the balances. Everyone agreed to this. Almost nobody was told what they were agreeing to. So what does the account actually cost? Often there is no monthly fee, no charge for the card, no charge for the transfers. The account looks free. It is not free. It is paid for with the use of your balance during the hours you are not looking at it, which is most hours. Around 10, the overnight positions unwind. What was lent comes back. Balances are squared. The building's books return to a shape that will satisfy the morning. This reversal is as routine as the outbound leg, and it happens with the same complete indifference to whose paycheck was involved. Just before midnight, the receiving bank runs its posting cycle. This is the moment the word pending becomes a number. Not because a human approved anything, because a scheduled process reached his account in an alphabetical or numerical sequence and applied the credit that had already been agreed hours earlier. The order of that sequence is not neutral, and it is worth knowing. Whether credits post before debits, and in what order debits post among themselves, determines whether an account crosses zero. For anyone living close to the line, the sequence of a nightly batch is the difference between a fee and no fee. His neighbor crossed zero on a Thursday for $11. The rent debit posted before the paycheck credit, and the sequence produced a fee larger than the shortfall itself. She had the money. It was in the same building, in the same batch, arriving the same night. It simply arrived in the wrong order. The order is a policy, not a physical necessity. Different institutions sequence differently, and the differences are disclosed in account terms that run many pages. For anyone whose balance regularly approaches zero, that sequencing policy is quietly one of the most consequential financial facts in their life. Saturday, 6 in the morning. The app shows a number instead of a word. To him, nothing happened overnight. To the system, his money traveled through a batch, sat in a settlement seam, joined a pool, participated in a market, generated a return for somebody else, and came home in time for breakfast. There is no line in his statement describing any of it. No entry that says your balance was used. No note about where it went. The statement records only what changed for him, which was nothing. The most active hours of that money's existence are, from his side, entirely blank. Now scale it. His 2,000 is one payment inside one batch inside one bank on one Friday. Every salaried person in the country is doing the same thing on roughly the same schedule. The system runs on a tide, and the tide is made of paychecks arriving on the same few days each month. Here is the sharper version of the whole story. Deposits are the least expensive funding an institution can obtain. Cheaper than borrowing from other banks, cheaper than issuing debt. And the reason they are cheapest is that the people supplying them are not trying to be paid for supplying them, which means something uncomfortable and true. Ordinary depositors are not customers of the funding market. They are the funding market. The most patient, least demanding, most reliable source of capital in the entire building is a few million people who mostly want their card to work at the grocery store. It is fair to ask why any of this still runs on batches. Partly inertia, partly the enormous cost of replacing plumbing that every institution depends on, and partly because batch processing is genuinely reliable. Newer instant rails exist and are spreading. The old timetable simply has not left yet. So what do you own at 3 in the morning? Not cash. A claim. Backed by a guarantee that covers balances up to a defined limit per depositor, per institution, per ownership category. Under that limit, the promise is extremely strong. Above it, the promise is only as strong as the institution behind it. That limit is the single most practical thing in this entire story. Most people never approach it and never need to think about it. Anyone who does approach it, whether from a house sale, an inheritance, or a business account, has crossed from a guaranteed position into an ordinary creditor position. This is why the week after a house sale is quietly the most exposed week in many people's financial lives. A very large balance sits in one ordinary account above the guaranteed line, waiting to be moved somewhere. It is a completely normal situation that almost nobody recognizes as a position. Nobody explains it because explaining it sounds alarming, and it should not be alarming. The system works. Payments clear, guarantees hold, and the overwhelming majority of people will never be affected by any of this. But not being affected is different from not being involved, and everyone is involved. Once you see the mechanism, one question changes shape. It stops being, how much interest does my account pay, and becomes, who is capturing the return my balance generates? In many accounts, the answer is almost entirely the institution, and that answer is disclosed in a document nobody reads. There is a number printed on his account terms, describing what the balance earns him. It is expressed to 2 decimal places, and it has not changed in 6 years, through several very different periods for the institution holding it. He has never once looked at it, and neither has anyone he knows. Here is the part that reframes the whole thing. The behavior being rewarded in that overnight market is not skill, timing, or risk appetite. It is stillness. Money that stays put is exactly what the system wants, and stillness is the one financial behavior almost everybody is already extremely good at. The response is unglamorous, which is why it works. Keep the balance you actually need for spending where it is convenient. Move the balance you do not need for months into something that pays you for the same behavior you are already exhibiting, which is leaving it alone. Notice what did not change in that move. He is not spending differently, saving differently, or taking a different position on anything. The money sits still either way. The only change is which party receives the return generated by it sitting still, and that is a decision made once. He does this on a Sunday in March, and it takes 19 minutes, including finding a password. 19 minutes. Once. The result is not dramatic. It will not change his life this year. It will quietly change every year after that on money that was already just sitting there. He keeps one rule, and it is deliberately unsophisticated. Whatever amount would make him hesitate at a grocery store stays where it is instantly available. Optimizing past that point buys nothing except a slightly better number and a slightly worse Tuesday when something unexpected happens. He does not chase the highest available number, move between institutions every few months, or build a complicated arrangement across 5 places. Each additional account is another password, another statement, another thing to reconcile. Complexity has a maintenance cost, and the maintenance cost is paid in attention. Meanwhile, the machinery keeps running exactly as before. Every Friday the batch forms, the seam opens, the pool sweeps, the short market clears, and the posting run reaches his line just before midnight. Nothing he did interrupted any of it. He simply stopped being the only party who was not paid. He tries to explain it once, at a barbecue, and does it badly. His brother hears the word overnight market and assumes a warning is coming. There is no warning. That is the hardest part to communicate. The correct response to understanding this is calm. And calm makes for a very poor story. One question replaced all the others. Not, where should this money go? And not, what rate can it get? Simply this, which of these dollars am I genuinely going to touch in the next 90 days? Everything else is behaving like a long-term deposit already, whether or not it is being treated as one. He still sees the word pending most Fridays, and it still means what it always meant. The difference is that he now reads it correctly, not waiting. Working. Somewhere in a batch, inside a seam, inside a pool, inside a market that only exists between dusk and dawn. None of this is a reason to distrust a bank, withdraw cash, or treat the system as a threat. The machinery is genuinely impressive, and it mostly protects people. This is a reason to understand what you are participating in, because participation without understanding is the condition most people are in. What stays with him is smaller than the mechanism. It is the 8 hours themselves. The specific idea that while he cooked dinner, argued about a film, and fell asleep, a number with his name on it was somewhere else entirely, being useful to people he will never meet. So consider your own Friday. Whatever amount arrived this week is not sitting in a container with your name on it. It is in a pool, in a market, in a seam, generating a return for somebody, and it will be home by morning. Who has been collecting that return while you slept?